right. Yes, it's 1:45 in Amsterdam time and 11:45 Ghana time, 6:45 Sarawak time, which means that we get started with the last part of today's session. And where in the first two talks we've heard from speakers based in Amsterdam. I'm glad to announce that the next speaker will be speaking to us from a completely different part of the globe. So our next speaker is Professor Narayanan Kulathuramaiyer, who is the director of the Institute of Socio-Informatics and Technological Innovations, ICT. He's also a professor of computer science at the Faculty of Computer Science and Information Technology, which both are housed at UNIMAS University at Sarawak in Malaysia. His talk and his research is about connecting to rural communities across the country. Specifically, he will talk about working with rural communities in the Borneo Malaysian state of Sarawak, and also discuss a bit what the importance is of understanding what constitutes indigenous knowledge and how to talk to and with people from these indigenous communities. And I think in both talks that precede you, Prof. Nara, we've seen how important it is to understand context and to actually be, let's say, in these locations in order to build good AI systems. So I hope you can give us lots of interesting information on how we should engage with these local communities in order to build better systems. So a very warm welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Victor. Is my voice audible? Right.
That's perfect, and we can see your slides as well.
Okay, great. Okay, so while Hans was saying, we're looking at slides very clear from the other side of the world, right? So really looking forward to share. Thank you very much to Bra University for inviting myself and also for working on a long-term basis with UNIMAS. And I'm really pleased to work with the network of partners that you have been working with. And well, I kind of have a dream now that I've seen what you do and, really fascinating things. Well, it would be wonderful if communities can be anywhere, and then researchers can be anywhere else as well. And we could, well, just like picking up a handphone, we can just pick up a mobile phone and say, okay, let's connect together and solve this problem, right? And we can just plug any technology from the shelf and say, okay, let's combine it and mix it in this way, and let's give something that's unique that would add value to the current state of the art. Really, I think that's really what I would dream to do based on the current context of the pandemic situation, the lockdowns, the uncertainties. And before I start, I also like to share with you that one of the communities that we work with, the Long Lamai community in the Miri area. They right now, it's like they are a community who live with the forest and they don't know much about the pandemic. They go on with, until someone says, well, there's a person tested positive. In a way, it really changes the environment. It changes the way people have to suddenly put up with many more constraints. So it's not an easy time for us. And for me, I would love to go down and help to solve the problem. And I'm not allowed to travel. My vice chancellor says, sorry, travel is not allowed until the state says something has changed, right? So we are actually living in a very difficult time when people like myself tie my leg and say no travel. So that's really what I'm seeing, and I would love to look forward to a state where all these will disappear, and I'm in a way your team could come down and look at something, or we could also talk together with other partners and do something interesting. Take your success stories and move them to other places, right? So I'll move to my talk for today. The focus here is on what's in yellow, innovation. I mean, we're looking at innovation and we see digital socio-technical technologies. I mean, these technologies, they are enablers. And well, I didn't want to emphasize the enablers because the enablers need to be tuned, need to be kind of reshaped according to the circumstances, and as Victor says, according to the context that we engage in, right? So I think we need to look at innovation more and try to see how indigenous knowledge, I mean, this thing that well, this is my belief that many people do not understand what indigenous knowledge is truly about. And as we begin to understand our partners better, we will start appreciating yet another facet, and yet another facet of indigenous knowledge. So it's, for me as well, it's true. I mean, I can't say that I know what is indigenous knowledge. I can only say I'm learning a little bit more every time I engage with rural communities. So with that, I will start my session for today. Well, I mean, before I go in, well, just a kind of a promo on the Institute. The Institute, we go to rural communities. We try to bring about a knowledge society through inclusive technologies. And our strength is in the trust and relationships that we build with all these communities. And that is something that we will continue to do once the situation improves. And even now we are looking at new ways, or the new normal ways of engaging and working together, right? So our strength comes from the number of multidisciplinary researchers who work together in UNIMAS, and also all the partners like yourselves across the globe, right? So this is what I want to share with you. But another thing that people notice us for is we dare to go to places where other people say that's not possible, right? So I think that's something which is needed very much whenever you work in communities projects as what we do, right? So today's talk will look at three aspects. Firstly, we will take a quick look at what is this indigenous knowledge, and then I'll try to connect scientific inquiry with indigenous knowledge to see how we can blend the two in a meaningful way, where we can go into scientific inquiry without compromising the intricacies of indigenous knowledge, or how can indigenous knowledge blossom without, in a way, ignoring the scientific process, the need for ethics, the need for values, the need for logic, dialectics. I mean, we really need to combine all these things in a way that is helpful for all parties, right? And then I will just highlight one or two case studies that I thought was relevant for today's talk, right? Now, when we talk to communities like Barrio or Long Lamai, I mean, sometimes you think, I know what is indigenous knowledge, but sometimes you see that it is much more dynamic. There is a dynamized form of this knowledge that somehow tells us that we need to ask some more, we need to talk some more with them, right? So what I can tell you is from our lessons, indigenous knowledge is something that is disappearing. I mean, we know that the elders in communities, as they age and become not so active anymore, I mean, we are in a danger of losing their vast amount of knowledge, right? So we are talking about knowledge. We're talking about knowledge acquisition, knowledge elicitation, preservation of cultural knowledge. How can we harness this knowledge that is there in these communities to solve complex problems like climate change? So really, we need to see the kind of structured way of looking at indigenous knowledge. At the same time, we need to get used to the unstructured way where it exists in the minds of people. How can we actually get to work together in this unstructured manner, right? So these are the kind of contradictions that we face as we work along, right? Before I go into any talk, let me introduce what indigenous knowledge kind of means in our environment. Okay. Right. I just wanted to give you a taste of the difference between the oral traditions that is there in the Borneo Island as opposed to what you will see in Africa, right? I mean, there are lots of similarities, and I'm sure you will be able to connect immediately, right? So there are similarities. At the same time, well, there are also some kind of differences that you will notice, and they used to transmit knowledge in this taste-sit form, right? So this is something, first thing that we take note of when we talk about indigenous knowledge. Indigenous knowledge is transmitted more in kind of implicit form rather than expressed and submitted, transmitted as explicit form of knowledge as we see in all organizations. So this is, for me, the biggest distinction between the two types of knowledge. So we need to learn to understand the strengths of each one and to see how we can best create value from each of these. And you see, the thing is, within each of these songs or artifacts, the context of what was happening in a historical setting is maintained in there. And yesterday we saw a talk on storytelling from the African context. I mean, we all know, I mean, it's exactly the same as what I'm talking about here. I mean, though geographically they are distributed regions, well, it's the same thing, right? Indigenous knowledge exists in a variety of forms, right? So now, as we look at indigenous knowledge from such a broad, holistic way that I explained, now I'm just going to look at what does United Nations say about indigenous knowledge. Well, this is really from their website, and I just wanted to kind of immediately highlight to you, refers to understanding, skills, philosophies developed by societies with long histories of interaction with natural surroundings. For rural and indigenous people, local knowledge informs decision-making about fundamental aspects, right? So from here, you can see that, well, everybody knows what it is, but then do we really know? No, so that question comes up when we read these definitions. The definitions tells you that many things are invisible in the way this knowledge is handled. I mean, the way knowledge is handled. So in a way, there is some peculiarities about indigenous knowledge, which is not highlighted here except for the lack of structure and the well, the outcomes, right? So here, this is what I can tell you. And the next line tells you about language, systems of classification, resource, I mean, social interaction, rituals and spirituality. Well, some of these things are common. Systems of classification is common in scientific knowledge as well as indigenous knowledge. But when you look at rituals and their roles in expressing something important, insights, all these things are things that somehow we tend to de-emphasize. I mean, even for myself, I mean, coming from a more scientific background, I mean, trying to see how we can shape the way we work so that we value these things is really the question that we want to start and take a look at today's talk, right? So now I will just summarize for you what I see as indigenous knowledge. I think as we saw the oral tradition expressed by an elder in Barrio, we can see that indigenous knowledge is multi-layered, multi-dimensional, and it's based on a holistic worldview. It connects all living beings, not only human beings, right? Animals, I mean, well, even insentient beings. In a way, there is a kind of relationships that has been fostered among everyone. And there's an understanding of a need to be fair, right? All these things are implicit, not really said, but they are expressed as values. So when we talk about indigenous knowledge, I mean, this is really what makes it truly wonderful. And I know even in organization, values are now very much emphasized. Ethics are being emphasized. We want AI to be safe. So we need to look at ethics, right? We need to look at, well, measures of bringing in what really matters to us as humans, right? All those things are richly found in indigenous knowledge representation, right? So they are context embedded artifacts, and they are modeled and exchanged implicit manner. Well, when something happens, a song is created, and the song tells a lot about all the actors in a particular situation, right? So all the actors are connected together as a snapshot, and that's what the song just now revealed to us, right? So it's modeled and exchanged. Now the song can be transferred across time, and somehow some aspects of the context may be lost. And if we do not pay attention to enough details about the context, we are going to only get part of the story, not the whole story, right? So that's why, I mean, we use methods like, as you see, there's a drawing over here. I mean, the problems we face is even more challenging than what I used to face when I was a knowledge engineer working with industrial partners, right? So right now, definitions are changing, their worldviews are changing. So we have to use lots of visual tools, right? Visual mechanisms for knowledge elicitation, as what you see here. I mean, this was expressed by the local community when we posed trigger questions to them. So in a way, when we try to elicit indigenous knowledge, I mean, the kind of challenges we face is even much more, because, well, you can't ask Garen, who's in Long Lamai, can you tell me all the knowledge that you have on this plant? Of course, even if he wants to, he wouldn't be able to solve that problem, right? So I just give you one example, I mean, to highlight what we're talking about. Well, I went to a local community near Kuching once, and well, perhaps I look like a doctor, right, to the community member. So the community member immediately asked me, do you have any paracetamol? So I didn't take it very seriously at that time, but upon thinking back, I realized, oh my God, these people are now becoming more and more reliant on Western medicine. And in a way, when they face pain, or when they face difficulties, they can't go and look for a doctor at that time. So those were the things in my mind. But then when I went to Long Lamai and told Garen, Garen, some of my teammates are having stomach ache. He says, no problem. I will go to the nearby forest and pluck some leaves. He turned it into a drink, and he made it into a herbal tea, and immediately my friend was cured. Right? So you can see the contrast between community A and community B. Community A, the knowledge of indigenous heritage, I mean, their way of life is totally forgotten. And somehow, well, the situation is kind of well, sad and pathetic, where there's a need for you to say, I don't understand how this disease works, just give me a painkiller. So that is really the contrast between what we saw in a community that's still holding on to its traditional knowledge, its indigenous knowledge for the way of life, like medicinal aspects of living, right? And a community that has forgotten, right? So this is just to illustrate to you the challenge we're facing. So the question that I want to ask now, are we aware of the true potential of indigenous knowledge in our systems that we build? So now I'm going to move into socio-technical systems, particularly digital socio-technical systems, right? So even when I was looking at the SDGs, this 17, I mean, they're not organized knowledge. I mean, this knowledge is just a grouping of things. And even when I saw some studies trying to organize it, I see that they are also struggling in creating a deeper understanding of connections between life, connection between learning, connection between systems that heal. So this, I mean, when you do not go down to the integrated approach, holistic approach of modeling knowledge, you'll find that there is some aspect of shallowness which makes life difficult, and us as AI people, I mean, if you want to start modeling without a deep understanding is going to be a challenge, right? So I was looking at World Economic Forum. I mean, they have got this model of what artificial intelligence is, right? So they look at all this jargon on your outside, all the technologies that they want to build, and can AI overcome these limitations, you know? So when I look at this, I see, I mean, Anna's book comes to my mind. I mean, she talks about ICT for D cannot be a prescribed approach top down. So for me, this is a prescribed approach based on development, based on assumptions that the whole world is ready for these technology, which is not true. Right? So there is a kind of model that they have seen somewhere and they say, let's export our model. I'm sure it will work in another part of the world, right? So this type of mentality actually destroys what traditional knowledge, what indigenous knowledge stands for. So this is really the point that I wanted to make. So let us now, we as ICT for D practitioners or people who know about ICT for D, we should be the ones who propagate the message that we should pay more attention to the connections within the nature and the link from nature to my day-to-day life, and also link it to decision making. So when we can emphasize such relationships, we will move away from such top-down models, right? And this one, I just saw it last night, I mean, around 12 midnight or something. Well, this is a paper from, it is Yap, Chia, and Anna and Hans. I mean, I really like this paper, and I'm a kind of a fan of your E3 value, right? So I can see that what you dare to do in this model is something that I rarely see in any other ICT for D work, because you are looking at sustainability, right? So I know I'm talking about traditional knowledge, I'm talking about indigenous knowledge. When we look at this model, I can say, well, I have one suggestion to improve it. I love it. I like it. It has done much more value to our team in understanding how money is transferred, how we can make Long Lamai into sustainable community. So we have seen all this. You have done us a big favor. But what I'm saying is, it is still not sustainable. I mean, when I saw the figures, I said these figures shows us that it's not sustainable, and your conclusion was also right. You said it is not sustainable. You are absolutely right. So you knew that what we are doing in terms of coming up with a web shop to sustain the local community is not going to be sustainable. So the question that I'm asking you now is, how can we make it sustainable? Right? Now, you guys are the experts in E3 value. Can you tell me how we can translate this model, which is real? It is reality for the community now. How can I convert this into a working model that harnesses indigenous knowledge, right? So I leave you with this question, but it is thought-provoking. I mean, if any group of students want to look at it, I can tell you we've got a paper that everybody wants to listen to. Nobody has the answers, right? And well, I'll give you a hint. The hint is, when we look at intangible aspects of knowledge modeling, which is found in traditional or indigenous knowledge, we will get a much more effective model, and we might even get a sustainable model for rural communities like Long Lamai, right? So this is what I want to share with you. And one thing that came out, I mean, we had some partners from in Netherlands. I mean, they came over. I mean, well, there was Philip Gujon. I mean, he was a person who was in this institute called Legit. I mean, they were looking at ethics and how communities do things. What can we learn so that we can have science and society merging better? So while he was looking at this, he said every tourist who comes to Lamai should be paying 3,000 US or euros, right? 3,000 euros for a taste of the local life, a taste of the value from indigenous knowledge in a journey that they are familiar with. I mean, if we could go for such high impact tourism for the community, I can tell you we can move from where we are to where we need to be. So this is really the kind of directions that I'm kind of looking at pushing our group. I mean, I'm including myself to see how we can all share our knowledge, to see where we can come in to change things, to make the traditional knowledge, which is still in the minds of few people like Garen and Wilson and all, how can we make that into value-added products? And these value-added products, how can we change the lives of such communities that are subject to vulnerabilities, they are subject to all form of difficulties. I mean, they don't understand the way the diseases work and all, but they have to play the game. Otherwise, they will be contributing to something that they don't want to be contributing, right? So you can see this is the situation and there is an answer, right? So when I look at, now I'm going to the students. I know I'm talking about things that is kind of high level, but for the students, what we need to remember as we learn and engage with people who have a different worldview. These local communities, they have an entirely different worldview. What we need to do is we shouldn't take a stand where I know the answers, I'm going to share it with you. So it shouldn't be that way. We need to kind of elicit, bring out in whatever clever way, right? So when we deal with these communities, we need to look at communities not as passive users, but communities as active users. We need to move them further. They need to become content creators. And as we evolve in terms of our relationships and understanding, we want them to become co-designers, right? So I think that's really the challenge for us. And as you take one step forward every time, you will realize that as co-designers, your job becomes easier. Right? You're no longer asking, how should I get this data from you? No longer that way. I mean, it's like, how can we think together to formulate something more meaningful, which will enhance living and lifestyle, right? So as we do that, I mean, when we came up with our systems like eToro is a way of life of the Penans. We were looking at intellectual property ownership. I mean, we were looking at very, very sophisticated topics, but when we bring it down to the community such that they can appreciate it, they can give you ideas you will never imagine, right? So this is a lesson. And what I'm telling you is we don't want to stop at them being co-designers. We want to go forward. We want them to be vision creators, co-creators of vision, right? And I already saw semblance of what can be done with the African counterparts. I mean, I saw some talks yesterday and all. I mean, really, Francis, I mean, already highlighted some journey you have already taken, right? So can we go further? What can we do next is what we need to ask, right? And as I try to tell you, I mean, just a message, indigenous knowledge is not a single flat piece of knowledge. And well, this is an experiment. I mean, it was done by my PhD student. Well, I was co-supervisor for Tariq Zaman. In 2015, we published this knowledge governance model that looks at ethics and, in a way, the multifaceted lifestyle of rural communities where knowledge is embedded in actions. Right? So knowledge is not only embedded, I mean, knowledge management practices, I mean, they kind of summarize all the forms of knowledge explication that we normally do in organization. They kind of group them together and they create value in a kind of aggregated fashion. So we saw that the artifacts like stories, songs, and skills are really the implicit knowledge and, well, kind of explicated because we still remember parts of the story, but then we don't have all the context. So there is explicit knowledge inside implicit knowledge. And then, in a way, we only get pieces. So what can we do? And the thing that we realized we needed to do carefully is engage communities as equal partners. So that's why you see in layer 5, community engagement layer, free, prior, and informed consent agreement. So we come up with these protocols to ensure that interaction is not biased. I mean, we try to reduce biasness as much, and assumptions, we remove them. We go towards co-visioning, right? So this is, I know there's a lot for the students, but just to tell you that The structure is complex. There's a lot of detail here. I mean, I could talk to you about more details on this, but what I want to share with you is, we need to do more research to expand on this, right? So coming to the last part of my talk, let me just go into some case studies, right? The first case study that, I mean, in a way, I mean, I really like talking about this case study. It's about our project that we did with the European Commission, right? We did a project on capacity building in higher education. And well, the project was, I mean, there were partners from Spain, there were partners from Germany. I mean, so these guys were experts in massive open online classrooms. So they knew how to deliver massive open online classrooms, including the Open University of Netherlands, right? So the third European partner was from Netherlands, right? So these guys, they knew their business well, right? So then the project was to see how we can improve the capacity building in UNIMAS and 2 other Asian universities so that we can take this technology to marginalized or disadvantaged groups, right? So that was the call, and that's what we tried to do. And so my colleague, I mean, when she went and talked to the rural communities, I mean, she went and talked to elderly ladies. We were looking at single mothers. And when we talked to these mothers, we were asking them, there is this technology called MOOC. Would you like them? Of course, they said, what is that? Right? So, but anyway, my colleague, well, what she said is, well, there is a new technology. It is like a refrigerator. And what you can do is you can put your food in the refrigerator. Whenever you need it, you can take out as much, and you can take part of it, and you can put some more. And in a way, you can share it with somebody when you need it, where you need it. And this food that is called knowledge, it doesn't reduce when you take it out, you know. So we just gave them some impressions like that. And the community says, we have no need for your MOOC technology. Why do we want this food that you are trying to share with us when we are struggling to live our day-to-day life living? In a way, we are struggling, trying to preserve our knowledge. Why is it that we want to accept some more food when our food itself is not being taken care of well, right? So what we want is, if your technology can allow me to take my knowledge and put it into your refrigerator, and my children can listen to it at any time, then my art form will not disappear, right? So this is the message. I mean, we were stunned when these elderly ladies who have lots of experience, I mean, they were telling us that our beading knowledge needs to be preserved. Our children need to know it. They are in cities. They are forgetting this. They are not seeing the value of it. How can we use this new technology to help our younger generations, show them by our own ways, I mean, in some way where they can look at our knowledge and make it theirs, right? So the other thing that Sinarang, who is our mentor, she said is, I want to teach my grandchildren how to make this ornament using beads. There are many techniques that they should know, and they can only learn from us. Nobody else knows how to do this, right? So this is a kind of, I mean, it's not a kind, I won't say she's proud. I would say that, you know, there's a desire to save, a desire to protect something that they have cherished for years, you know. Their lives have changed drastically, you know. They were the first batch who went to school, or, you know, things like that. Suddenly now they see that what they knew is all not going to be relevant anymore. So this is a strong message that I want to send to you about the value of indigenous knowledge, right? So this was what happened to the project. After the European partners told us that this is the technology and this is what we have, we said, okay, let's turn Open edX into a platform for rural communities, right? So that's the challenge we took, right? We did a pilot project on this, but what we had to do before we started on the work with the technology was, how can an integrated socio-technical system that enables lifelong learning for rural communities be established by just using the MOOC platform? Well, the answer was no way. These ladies didn't even have a Google email address. They didn't have Gmail addresses. So how can you expect them to have an open edX? In a way, it was not possible. So we said, okay, what can we do as a bridge to ensure that such a technological capability can be transferred from the north to the south? That's all we took as a challenge. And what we started to do was appreciated by everybody, because one-way knowledge transfer became two-way knowledge transfer, and the teachers of the MOOCs became these ladies, and we trained facilitators in the community to be able to help them to convert their knowledge into videos. We started using iPads and all these mobile devices, which was immediately a hit, and they could manage it, right? So this is really what we managed to do, and these are some of the outcomes that came out of this project in 2 communities, right? So you can see we started establishing a YouTube site with all these videos, and I'm hoping that with some more linkages to different communities, we can expand our knowledge base, we can expand our teaching classroom, a global classroom, which is led by the community, right? So this is really what I would like to share with you as our first case study on what we managed to do, right? So I think it's not something that only we can do in UNIMAS. I can tell you it's also immediately transferable to Africa and other sites, right? So, we are happy to share our knowledge and to see how we can take EBKF as a platform, Borneo Knowledge Fair as a platform where we can take these learnings to make it happen in other places. So this is really what we started to do. And what we started to do with Open edX, we moved to Moodle. Right? Initially, we were looking at Open edX. We said Moodle is good enough for whatever we wanted to do. So now we have offline versions of Moodle running to serve some of these needs. Right? So it's very exciting. Right? So I think I'll move away from that case study to another case study. And this case study is a contrast, completely different from what you saw just now. This one is looking at Garen and his knowledge, right? So these guys have tons of knowledge, but people from the outside world consider them as lazy people. Why? Because they don't do work the way the outside world does. Very simple. We say we need to go to the big farm and you need to go and do farming, but these guys says no need. We have all our resources in the supermarket of the forest, right? So they just go to the supermarket of the forest, they just get everything, they don't need any form of income, or so in a way it's really, they are fully self-sustainable. Now if we stop them from being sustainable, then we are destroying them. So really this is the danger that we are facing. So what we want to do in UNIMAS, we want to show that the innovation in the forest is on par with the scientific innovation. This is the thing that we are trying to do in UNIMAS. And we started this project. We have been funded by the Malaysian government to do it as a national study, fundamental research grant scheme. So unfortunately, travel has been prohibited, but we are doing all the groundwork now. So what we have done is we have come up with some graphical images of what we have seen here, right? For example, in a Penan village, they have baskets like this, and they've been using this for hundreds of years, right? And where they got their idea, they got the idea from nature, right? So they use patterns in nature, and they convert their patterns in nature into objects of use. But we saw in Barrio, the same technology is being used, right? So the same technology we saw in Long Lamai is also used in other communities, right? So there is sharing, and these days, if you go to modern houses, resorts and all, you see these contemporary designs. Their local knowledge is still there, but it's translated in some way. So we are not able to create value, and nobody actually notices the source of such knowledge. So in a way, they are creative. And then when we look at the patent databases, Google Patents, you can search for this. You'll find all these designs that actually took this forest object that we saw there just now, right? So we are looking at the connection between what we see in patent databases with what was the idea that came out hundreds of years ago in some place, in a remote place, right? Remote location, right? So these are the things that we are saying. So now our journey is to say, how can we put their knowledge on par? How can we benchmark their knowledge to show the world that they are not lazy, they just do things differently in a way? So this is the challenge that we started to do, and we're trying to create enough value from our findings. And we just hope that, well, I mean, we have some success stories, which I will share with you all in my next talk, right? But for now, I'll just tell you that this is something that will carry us through the pandemic. And I just hope that the whole world will change because of such knowledge, right? With that, I just have to say thank you again for the opportunity. Well, I enjoyed myself. I hope you enjoyed my presentation as well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Professor Nara. Speaking for myself, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm sure that the rest did as well. I see some interesting remarks already from some people, so I really want to leave some time also for questions and remarks from you. Maybe Anwar, this is a comment that you posted, the first comment a bit early, but maybe you want to elaborate a bit on that, on maybe your second question as well.
Thank you very much, Professor Nara. I really enjoyed your expose very, very much. And I would like to be a little bit more provocative in my reaction.
Right.
I think you are too modest in exposing what the possibilities are with indigenous knowledge. I wouldn't call it even indigenous knowledge. I would call it deep knowledge or high level knowledge that the world needs at the moment. So in my opinion, we should get it. We should get the work that we are doing out of the welfare label and get it towards the much needed work to be done at the moment, because this knowledge has been ignored by what I call the first world, because we do have one-sided view of how the world should be done. And there is one issue that I think need to be dealt with, is the fact that we are talking also about conflict of interest between the establishment, the system as is now, and the interest of the whole world society. So we have to confront this and see how to deal with this issue, because we are dealing with very strong parties with very strong financial interests. And I always have learned that we have to work on the 3 P's: people, planet, and profit. So not only talk about people from the side of convincing people about the good thing that we are doing. And the planet is, of course, a very important issue, and people are really starting to be convinced about the environmental interest and the importance of this. But we really also to talk about the profit side, because if you really want to win this battle, and it is a battle to conduct, we have to have also good financial interests and a good system that would be kept in balance, where people also are making profit, but in the same time maintaining the people and planet interests, in contrast with the existing system, where there is much more focus on the profit and maybe much less focus on the people and planet. So this is what I would like to contribute. I'm very interested to hear, Professor Nara, what you think about this.
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, I like your words, which you said humble, right? We have taken a humble stand.
Yeah.
Well, the reason is because we don't have as much resources as we need. I think that's really the challenge. So the stand we took was to look at coming up with pilot projects, and every project that we have done in the past was a kind of a pilot as a proof of concept to show that communities can be sustainable despite the lack of connectivity, despite the disadvantages. So we have proven many of this. Now, we have been talking to government departments. I mean, we've been talking to many agencies who should be doing this as their day in, day out job. But somehow we don't have those takers who just say, okay, well done. You've already shown how it can be done. Let us do it now. And industries are also kind of slow because, well, I mean, they are in the cities, there are more users for the telcos. And, so we have been struggling. We've been proposing a number of things, but we have yet to really make a mark that will make an impact. And all I can say is, yes, planet, people, and profit is really something that we need to find a balance. And at the moment, we have to do much more work, which is really what we are doing, to come up with one big success story that everybody notices. And once I have that, I mean, well, I think it'll be an easier fight for me. Right now, I mean, I have been recognized as one of the top research scientists in Malaysia. I mean, fortunately for that. So because of that, I'm able to talk with the Academy of Sciences, right? So we are looking at people who can be influential. So, I mean, if I succeed, you will see my name somewhere, but otherwise you see my head bleeding, you know what happened as well, right? So in a way, the fight is on, and I need many friends, really. So this is something that I really look forward to engaging with people all around the world. I mean, people who feel, in terms of sentiments, I feel this should work. I know I can do a bit. If you can say, I can just do this, please do that. We will do something more together. So I have to make a plea to everyone, right? What you are good at, let's do it, right? Let's do it together, such that Nara plus Anwar will be more than what Nara or Anwar only is.
Thank you very much.
That's a very good point. Yeah, we are a bit of time, but I would like to still leave one or two short questions. I see Anna has a question, but maybe somebody from the students has a question as well. And maybe you want to think about it while Anna asks the first question, and then I'll go to your question, Maria.
Okay, Prof. Nara, thank you for your very inspiring lecture. It's fantastic. And so nice to hear, and also good for us to know that we must be humble. We must be more humble, even more humble than we think we are, when we talk to communities and we talk about indigenous knowledge, and then it shows us that we still don't know so many things that are important and relevant for the world and for the environment, for the health and well-being of people. And referring to the E3 value model that we made, of course, that's also, we must be also very humble when we do that, because, well, on the one hand, the model is very democratic because it's a network, so everybody exchanges, let's say, goods and values with each other. On the other hand, it's very Western centered because it's only talking about money. And we applied this actually also in Mali in a project with farmers who are trying to sell their seeds. And then we noticed that they are exchanging actually seeds without money. So it's a non-financial system, but it works. And it illustrates exactly what you are saying. So we are so limited in our views of the world, and we must really expand our views by let's say, engaging with the communities. But then I have a question to you also, because we did a project, we tried to do a project on African traditional medicine a few years ago. It was actually not accepted by the European Commission, but it was a very good proposal, and it was actually to link with semantic, with linked data, the African knowledge, the traditional African medicine knowledge with the conventional medicine. But then we came to the problem of the intellectual property rights and the intellectual property of the knowledge that the people have. And there were farmers who were treating people with herbs and traditional medicines. And they didn't want to share that knowledge because it can be stolen. So if we throw that in the world and we open up that knowledge because we think that knowledge must be open, then we are also giving away their knowledge. How should we go with that in mind?
Okay, I don't know if I could answer your question, but I will answer it in a particular way, which has a message. Well, when we were working with Long Lamai, I mean the Penan community, in preserving their botanical knowledge. Right? And well, in order to preserve their botanical knowledge, we told them that we will build a system which will keep all your what you know, whatever you have in your books, whatever you have in your mind into a system. So we were explaining these things to them. And well, I mean, this is kind of trying what they think of, some technology that is out there. And well, sometimes in their humble ways, they tell us something that will shock us. I mean, what he told us is, we do not want any system. He told me this. He says, I don't need any of your systems because we don't believe in anything we cannot hold. They have such a culture. And he says, well, I can't hold your knowledge in my hand. Okay, well, what we had to do was we used a method to do participatory design. We designed ways of recording videos as traditional knowledge. I mean, we came up with all this, we showed it to them, but we still hadn't solved the problem. How can he hold the knowledge in his hand, right? So that's something that was not possible. So what we had to do was we had to create a version of the content management system on external drive. Right? So what we had to do is, I mean, in a way, being ethical means not having a copy of it on the hard disk somewhere in the network, right? In the cloud. So we just say, this is your knowledge. So we had to give him a sample of what could be a model where he, as an elder, as a community member, is able to have full control over the knowledge that could be misused by a youngster who may just take a poisonous herb, So in a way, it could be used in a way which is dangerous. I mean, so in a way, knowledge has responsibility. So in a way, what these guys have is they have an embedded way of dealing with responsible use of knowledge. And I have not studied anywhere in my AI course responsible use of knowledge. I have not come across anywhere. And until we have those things in place, I think your question is difficult to answer.
Thank you.
Thanks. Looking at the time, I don't want to keep you much longer, but I did want to give Srinivas the opportunity to ask the last question of the day. So Srinivas, go ahead.
Yeah, Prof. Nara, thank you very much. This is Mus Baramusa. Thank you very much. I think I learned something from you.
I gave the floor to Srinivas.
Hello?
Srinivas, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm able to hear you.
Yes.
But if he wants to ask his question, he can as well, but if that's time.
Yeah, maybe you go ahead first, Srinivas.
Yeah, perfect. Dr. Narayanan, sir, yeah, I just went through your profile today morning. It was quite interesting. Apart from that, I was very much excited to take part of your seminar or the presentation. And being part of this really good indigenous knowledge based presentation, and the more, as Anwar also said, you were very modest about it. And I'm also on the same boat. So there was a small incident which happened to me in India. So I got sprained and I wasn't able to walk for a couple of days. I was taking homeopathy medicines, and it didn't work. I mean, the English medicines, it didn't work. But the third day, my grandparent told me to take tamarind and hot water, just to put it on your leg. I mean, the pain would reduce. But all of a sudden, it all happened in the next day. My pain got completely cured. I mean, that was something, a knowledge which I didn't know, which I didn't trust. But later on now, since I got experience to it, I did started trusting about it. So then I went on to research. That's a small problem where I came through. I felt a lot of people didn't know about, not only didn't know, didn't trust about such knowledge. And how could AI be used for that? to trust such knowledge. And I was exploring a lot of books, went to libraries, started looking at Ayurvedic text and stuff. But I had a small question here. I have a small question here. One is, what is the confidence that I could bring into the present generation? What is that confidence in the indigenous knowledge from one community to other? And second thing, since the current generation is appearing a lot faster, the Western generation, and the traditional generation is like disappearing a little bit slowly. I mean, it is disappearing. So how fast is this supposed to be done? The transfer of knowledge, the indigenous knowledge, though.
Okay, well, you asked a very difficult question. Now, well, from our experience, I just like to say thank you very much. I think is something that we can easily connect to. And what I can say is we have actually shown some use cases. We have some use case where knowledge of paddy planting. I mean, because Barrio has the best rice, everybody knows about it. So, and Long Lamai says, how can we grow your paddy in our own place? In a way, there is a need for transfer of knowledge. So during our exchanges, informal exchanges, we were able to transfer such knowledge across a site. But what you are asking is, how can we do this transfer to a community of youngsters who probably have a different value set?
Yeah.
My one word answer is, you need patience. You need patience. You need to engage, listen to them. Even if you know, listen, and slowly they will say, let me try to understand what he's saying. The moment you achieve that, you've got it already, right? Until then, it's going to be a big challenge for you. And I'd just like to say, in India, you have got your innovation networks. You've got patent lawyers who will fight to protect, Ayurvedic traditions, or things like that. So you have things in place. People like Anil Gupta in the North India, and they are doing wonderful jobs. So you just need to look out what they are doing in Barefoot College. So I've been to some of these places. I can tell you that you need to open your eyes, see what others are doing, be patient with the youngsters, and you need to talk their language, right? So the second answer to your question is, one of the things that we found difficult to preserve was the symbol language. Just now we saw there was in my slide, here, right? So you see here, there is a sign language, there is a traditional sign language, which the Penan community found that their youngsters were not using. Yeah. Right? So in a way, well, why should they use it? Now you've got emojis and other things, right? And one of our studies is showing that the use of emojis is counterproductive to in terms of preserving their values. So we are looking at that aspects, but what we have to do with youngsters, very easy, build an app for them. They immediately can relate examples from the past and they can dynamize it in their own scenario. They started designing their own symbols, right? Using, well, emoji icons together, so they will do things that you will expect them not to be able to do if you just trust them, give them the right place and build along, right? Hold their hands and pull them together. You can do wonders. So that's...
Thanks a lot. And I love to be on the same boat as far as I'm possible to.
Thanks a lot.
Can I come in now?
Go ahead, Musa.
Yes. Hi, Prof. Really, I learned something from you because you take back to where our forefathers, what they do, what they used to do, and all these things. And this is actually an old culture. Everywhere has it, and now it becomes like what you call it, difficult to get that culture. But I think everybody is connected to that culture, especially in the third world countries and emerging countries. Europe, I think they have already gone back. Far away from that. So what I'm suggesting, thank you very much. Really, it is very enlightening. Lecture. And really, what I can say is, this is actually what they do the traditional things they do, the indigenous knowledge they have, actually we call it silent science. Because remember when we were young schoolboys, we were saying, which one comes first, science or technology? Because this is the old technology, which is actually silent science. So wherever my words is to you is, say this is the silent science, which is actually science, and we are not producing anything new, and that is what we have. So that is actually a word of support to you, and thank you very much. And really, I enjoy your talk, and other lecturers today. And thank you very much, and I appreciate everybody here. And really, I enjoy this session because although I'm engineering side, but I like AI because I use a small battery. So thank you very much, Prof. Nara and others, Maria and other speakers, and also Prof. The father there. I forget his name. Always we get wisdom from the fathers anyway. I guess you deserve to be called as a father, and everybody is actually done well here today and yesterday. And thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you for your kind words, Jose. Nara, Prof. Nara, if you want to react, I would like to give you the last word.
Well, I just like to say thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, don't forget some of the messages that I planted. These are not, I'm not saying it because I know the answer. I have to say that our journey is tough. Our journey is tough, and we are taking the path where people says, well, go to the city, easily you get the software going, right? But we are saying, let's turn the other way. I mean, so all of you who are interested to say here, I mean, you have already said, okay, let's all of us go the other way. And the other way has many thorns, but once you find a treasure, your life is made, right? You will find satisfaction more than anyone outside can imagine, right? So in a way, it is like we are the chosen ones, you can think about it. So thank you to each and every one of you for being you.
Thanks so much. Those are wonderful words to end this session with, Prof. Nara. We'd like to thank you very much. Also would like to extend that thank you to the other speakers, and especially also to the audience. I think we had a really lovely conversation with many nice inputs and questions. Unfortunately, at some point we have to stop because we can talk about this for hours, but we also need to get a good night's sleep because tomorrow the conference continues with another wonderful speaker. I'm not going to tell you who it is. So just, let me again thank you very much for your contributions. I'm just quickly looking. Tomorrow we start at 10:30 European Union time, 8:30 Ghana time, and 4:30 Malaysia time. So I hope to see you all then. And until that time, I wish you a very good day, good evening, and good morning even still. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.